They erased me to celebrate my screw-up brother's comeback that I secretly funded. But his new girlfriend works for me. She stood up at the party and toasted her boss. Me. The silence was epic. The nickname they had for me at the office was the Surgeon. It wasn't born of malice, but of a grudging respect. When a project was bleeding out, bloated with indecision and flawed concepts, they brought me in. I was the one who made the clean cuts, who amputated failing ideas without sentiment, who sutured the wounds with logic and a brutal kind of efficiency. My word, as they said, moved millions. My decisions shaped skylines. But at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday in the stark quiet of my own apartment, I was just Leo Vance performing a very different kind of procedure. My apartment was a testament to my professional life. Minimalist, clean lines, everything in its place. It was a space designed for function, not comfort, a place to recharge before the next battle. Anyone looking at my salary would have expected a penthouse overlooking Puget Sound. Instead, I lived here in this modest two-bedroom, where the only luxury was the silence. They didn't know the silence was paid for by a constant, draining noise elsewhere. I clicked open my laptop, the glow illuminating the tumbler of whiskey in my other hand. The amber liquid was my anesthetic. I navigated to my bank's website, my fingers moving with a familiar, tired muscle memory. The screen loaded. I initiated the transfer. Pay, Vance and Son Construction Supply. Amount, a number that made my own mortgage payment look like a rounding error. Memo, Q2 operating costs, June. I hit confirm. The screen blinked. Transaction successful. I leaned back, the leather of my chair groaning in protest. My monthly ritual was complete. The life support for the family business was secure for another 30 days. My gaze drifted to the other monitor, where a 3D model of a house sat suspended in digital space. It was a stunning piece of architecture, a blend of rustic timber and soaring glass, designed to meld perfectly into a lakeside cliff. It was my parents' dream house. My gift, a secret I'd been working on for months, a blueprint for a future I desperately wanted them to have, a future I hoped I could be a part of. A ghost of a memory surfaced. A few years ago, my brother, Ethan, had another one of his brilliant half-baked ideas. A crypto mining scheme that required a small seed investment. I'd said no. It was the first time I'd ever refused him outright. The fallout was biblical. My mother, Carol, had called me, her voice thick with manufactured tears. "You're tearing this family apart, Leo," she'd sobbed. "Your father's heart can't take this kind of stress. You're the strong one. Why can't you just help your brother?" The guilt she'd wielded was a master surgeon's tool in its own right. I'd caved, of course. The money was gone within 6 months. I learned my lesson. My strength wasn't a virtue. It was a resource to be exploited. My phone buzzed on the desk, rattling me out of the memory. It was her. Mom. I let it ring twice before answering, schooling my voice into a neutral tone. "Hey, Mom." "Leo." "Honey," she began, her voice a little too bright, a little too strained. "I was just calling to make sure, that everything went through okay." "It's done," I said. "The funds are there." "Oh, wonderful." A sigh of relief that was pure theater. "Your father was so worried. You know how he gets. Listen, are you getting excited for Saturday? The big party." I took a slow sip of whiskey. The burn was grounding. "I've been busy, Mom. Haven't thought much about it." "Well, you should. It's going to be marvelous. A proper celebration for Ethan. He's turned things around so spectacularly, hasn't he? A real prodigal son." Prodigal son, I thought. The story always leaves out the responsible brother who stayed home and fed the f***ing pigs. Asterisk. "Yeah, Mom," I said, my voice flatter than I intended. Spectacular. The next morning, I was standing over a light table, the blueprint for the Kestrel Tower project spread out before me like a patient on an operating table. We had a problem with the load-bearing calculations on the upper floors. A small miscalculation now could mean a catastrophic failure later. My job was to find it and cut it out. My focus was absolute. That was my world. A world of precision, of cause and effect, where every line had a purpose. It was a world away from the mess of my family. I decided to call my father. The party was just a few days away, And despite my reservations, a part of me, the stupid, hopeful part, still wanted to make an effort. The framed architectural rendering of their dream house was sitting in my closet, ready to be wrapped. It felt like a peace offering a bridge. He picked up on the fourth ring, his voice impatient. Arthur Vance. Hey, Dad. It's Leo. A pause. I know who it is. I'm busy. What is it? Just calling about the party on Saturday, I said, trying to keep my tone light. I was thinking of coming over a bit early, maybe give you guys a hand with setting up. The silence on the other end of the line was heavy, static-filled. I could picture him in his office at Vance & Son, a cramped, dusty room that hadn't changed in 30 years. He was probably pinching the bridge of his nose, annoyed at the interruption. Leo, he finally said, and his voice had dropped into a low, flat register. The voice he used when delivering bad news he felt no remorse for. About that, it's probably better if you don't come. The world tilted slightly. The meticulously drawn lines on the blueprint blurred. What? What are you talking about? It's Ethan's night, he said, as if that explained everything. This is a big moment for him, for the business. We're having some important people there. Clients. Investors. And I'm not important? The question slipped out, raw and childish. I hated the sound of my own voice. I heard him sigh, a gust of pure irritation. Don't be dramatic. This is about real business, Leo. It's about numbers on a spreadsheet, contracts, payroll. It's not about your drawings. Your drawings. He'd managed to distill my entire career, my entire life's passion, into a dismissive two-word insult. He didn't just uninvite me. He invalidated my entire existence in the same breath. He was telling me that my world, the one where I was the surgeon, was nothing but a childish hobby compared to the real world of his failing supply company, a company that was only solvent because of my drawings. We want the focus to be entirely on Ethan, he continued, his voice relentless. He needs this. We don't need any distractions. Distraction. That's what I was. A distraction from the carefully constructed narrative they were building. A story where Ethan was the hero, the savior. My presence, my quiet success, was an inconvenient fact that ruined their fiction. I see, I said. My voice was a stranger's. It was calm, detached. The surgeon assessing a terminal case. There was nothing left to save. Good. You understand. He sounded relieved. He'd done his duty. The line went dead. I stood there for a long moment, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone. I slowly lowered it, placing it on the table with surgical precision. My eyes fell on the Kestrel Tower blueprint. Every line perfect, every calculation precise. A world that made sense. When I got home that night, I walked into my closet, pulled out the large framed rendering of the lake house, and leaned it against the wall, facing away from me. The bridge was a failure. The patient was dead. The next few days passed in a blur of forced productivity. I buried myself in the Kestrel Tower project, working 16-hour days, fueled by stale coffee and a cold, simmering rage I refused to acknowledge. Work was my refuge. In the clean, logical world of architecture, there were no hidden meanings, no passive-aggressive subtext. A wall was a wall. A foundation was a foundation. You couldn't build a skyscraper on lies. On Saturday night, the night of the party, I ordered a pizza and turned on a baseball game, determined to ignore the elephant in the city. I managed for about an hour. But curiosity, that masochistic impulse, got the better of me. Just a quick look, I told myself. Just to see. I opened my laptop, the grease from the pizza making my fingers slick on the trackpad. I navigated to my father's Facebook page. And there it was. The top post was an album titled, Celebrating 35 Years and a New ERA for Vance & Son. The cover photo was of my parents and Ethan, standing together, beaming. My mother in a new dress, my father looking prouder than I'd ever seen him. Ethan, my God, Ethan was basking in it, soaking up the adoration like a withered plant in a downpour. He wore a suit that was too flashy, a smile that was too wide. He looked like a man playing a role and loving it. I clicked on the album. Photo after photo of smiling faces, clinking champagne glasses, catered food spread across long tables. It was all there. The clients. The investors my father had mentioned. distant family members. The whole damn world gathered to celebrate a fiction. My thumb scrolled down, a numb, mechanical motion. I saw a photo of my uncle, Ben, my dad's younger brother. He was a contractor, a straight shooter who always had a knack for seeing through bullshit. He wasn't smiling. He was looking off to the side, a skeptical frown on his face, as if he was listening to something he didn't quite believe. Then I saw the photo that stopped my heart. It was a candid shot, a little blurry, but the subject was perfectly clear. My father had his arm around Ethan's shoulder. They were both looking at something Ethan was holding. My mother stood beside them, her hands clasped to her chest in a gesture of pure, theatrical delight. In Ethan's hands was a large, beautifully framed piece of art. My blueprint. My gift. The architectural rendering of the lakeside dream house. My vision tunneled. The sounds of the baseball game on the TV faded into a dull roar. It was my design, unmistakable. The unique roofline I'd slaved over, the specific type of cedar siding I'd chosen, the way the deck cantilevered over the imagined slope of the hill. Every line, every shadow was mine. I scrolled down to the caption my father had written beneath the photo. My blood ran cold as I read his words. I'm utterly speechless. There are no words to describe the pride a father feels in a moment like this. Tonight, we celebrated the incredible business turnaround engineered by my son, Ethan Vance. We thought that was the greatest gift. But then, he presented us with this. Not just a gift, but a vision. A design for the future of our family, conceived and created entirely by him. He has inherited not just my business sense, but a creative spirit I never knew he possessed. This is what a true son, a true successor, looks like. Thank you, Ethan. You've made your old man prouder than you will ever know. Conceived and created entirely by him. The lie was so audacious, so complete, it was almost brilliant. It wasn't just a theft, it was an erasure. He hadn't just taken my work. He had taken the very essence of it, the love, the thought, the hope I had poured into it, and claimed it as his own. And my father, my own father, had endorsed the lie. He had broadcast it to the world. My hand started to shake. I scrolled down further into the comments section. A digital chorus of sycophants. Incredible, Ethan, a man of many talents. Arthur, you must be bursting with pride. What a son. Then a comment from my cousin, Mark, the family gossip. Amazing. Shows what you can do when you're focused on family and not off in your own little world. Some people could learn from this. A clear, targeted shot at me. Someone, a distant aunt, replied to Mark's comment. Where's Leo tonight anyway? It's a shame he couldn't be here for his brother's big night. Mark's reply came instantly. Who knows? Probably too busy with his projects. Always been a bit aloof, that one. Can't be bothered with family stuff. I slammed the laptop shut. The crack of the plastic echoed in the silent apartment. I stood up, knocking over the pizza box. I paced the room, a caged animal. The betrayal was a physical thing, a shard of glass in my gut, twisting with every step. They hadn't just uninvited me. They hadn't just stolen from me. They had replaced me. They had taken the one pure thing I had left to offer, my drawings, as my father called them, and used them as the cornerstone for their new, perfect family portrait. A portrait in which I was not only absent, but retroactively painted as the jealous, aloof, uncaring son who was too selfish to even show up. I walked to the window and stared out at the city lights, the skyline I helped build. A world of steel and glass and concrete. A world of solid, tangible things. It was the only thing that felt real anymore. Because my family, the very foundation of my life, had just proven itself to be made of nothing but smoke and mirrors. While I was staring out my window, the party across town was reaching its crescendo. The air in the rented hall was thick with the scent of lilies and self-congratulation. The champagne flowed freely, loosening tongues and polishing the gleaming facade of the Vance family success story. Ethan was in his element. He moved through the crowd with the unearned confidence of a king, accepting backpats and handshakes, talking loudly about Q3 projections and leveraging brand synergy. He was a master of the performance. My Uncle Ben, nursing a beer near the bar, watched the whole spectacle with a jaundiced eye. He saw my father, Arthur, holding court, retelling the story of Ethan's visionary gift for the 10th time. Ben knew I'd been working on a design for my parents. He wasn't sure of the details, but his bullshit meter was screaming. It was during a lull in the music that Ethan decided to introduce his new girlfriend, Chloe, to the inner circle of family and key investors. "Everyone," he announced, draping his arm around her, "I'd like you to meet the brilliant and beautiful Chloe. She's the new secret to my success." He gave her a squeeze. Chloe blushed, clearly a little overwhelmed, but genuinely happy. She was sharp, dressed in a tasteful navy blue dress that made her stand out from the gaudier attire of some of the other guests. She shook hands, her smile warm and authentic. She was a dose of reality in a room built on fantasy. Chloe just started at a major architectural firm downtown, Ethan boasted. She's a business analyst, a real brain, an investor. A portly man named Henderson smiled politely. "Oh, really? Which firm?" "Stanton and Moore," Chloe replied. Henderson's eyebrows shot up. "Stanton and Moore? Top of the line. My brother-in-law's firm did the steelwork for their Kestrel Tower project. An absolute monster. A landmark." The room quieted as the Toastmaster called for attention. After a few rambling, syrupy speeches from business associates, the microphone was handed to Chloe. The new lady in Ethan's life would like to say a few words. She looked momentarily panicked, but Ethan gave her an encouraging nod. She stepped forward, clearing her throat. "Wow," she began, her voice clear and steady. "I didn't prepare anything. I just want to say thank you so much to the Vance family for welcoming me so warmly. It's truly an honor to be here and to see Ethan get the recognition he deserves." She paused, looking at Ethan with genuine affection. Then her eyes swept over the room. "It's funny how worlds collide," she continued, a thoughtful smile on her face. "Hearing Mr. Henderson mention the Kestrel Tower, it's a project I've been working on closely since I started. It's an incredible undertaking, and honestly, I've learned more in the last 6 months than in my entire MBA program. And that's mostly down to one person. My direct boss." She raised her glass. "He's a genius, a true visionary who pushes everyone around him to be better. He can be demanding, even intimidating, but he's fair, and his dedication is the reason that building will be a masterpiece. So, if you'll indulge me, I'd like to propose a toast to him." The room was silent, expectant. My parents were smiling, assuming this was all part of a tribute to their perfect family. Chloe lifted her glass higher. Her voice rang out, crisp and clear, into the sudden hush. "To Leo Vance." The silence that followed was not empty. It was a physical entity. It sucked the air out of the room, extinguished the smiles, and froze time. You could hear the hum of the air conditioning, the faint clink of ice in a distant glass. A fork clattered from someone's hand onto a ceramic plate, the sound as loud and shocking as a gunshot. My mother's smile cracked and fell from her face. My father's jaw went rigid, a muscle pulsing in his cheek. Ethan went pale, then white, then a sickly shade of green. He looked like he'd been kicked in the stomach. Chloe, bless her innocent heart, was oblivious. She looked around, confused by the sudden, deafening stillness. "What?" she whispered, her smile faltering. Ethan grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into her skin. He tried to laugh, but it came out as a strangled cough. "Huh, honey. You mean Leo, my brother?" "Yeah, he works there." "Works there?" Chloe repeated, frowning. She was a business analyst. She dealt in facts and hierarchies. "He doesn't just work there, Ethan." Uncle Ben, from his perch by the bar, decided it was time to pour a little gasoline on the fire. "Oh, do tell Chloe," he called out, his voice laced with mock curiosity. "We're all dying to know." All eyes snapped to her. Trapped in the spotlight, she did the only thing she knew how to do: state the facts as she understood them. "Well," she said, looking directly at Ethan now, her confusion turning into dawning suspicion. "He's the lead architect for the entire Kestrel Tower development. They call him the surgeon because he's the one they bring in to save their most important projects. She took a breath, delivering the final, catastrophic blow. "He's in final interviews to be made a full partner at the firm." Partner. The word hung in the air, shimmering with implications of wealth, prestige, and success. Real, measurable success, not the Potemkin village of success they had constructed for Ethan. The whispers started, a wave of sound rippling through the stunned crowd. Partner at Stanton and Moore? I thought his son was. Did he say the surgeon? Henderson, the investor, looked at my father with new, calculating eyes. The facade had not just cracked, it had been demolished. The carefully curated story of the night, the story of Ethan the Savior, had been publicly, humiliatingly, and irrevocably obliterated by a toast from an unwitting witness who had simply decided to tell the truth. My father, Arthur Vance, stood there, his face a mask of cold fury. He wasn't looking at Ethan. He was looking at Chloe, but it felt like he was staring right through the walls of the hall, right across the city, and straight at me. For 2 days, my phone was a war zone. A relentless barrage of missed calls, voicemails thick with fake panic, and texts that swung wildly between feigned concern and outright accusation. I ignored it all. I put my phone on silent and let the digital storm rage without me. I needed the silence. I needed to let the new reality settle in my bones. The truth was out. The lie was dead. What came next? On the 3rd day, they escalated. A knock on my apartment door. Not a polite rap, but an urgent, insistent banging. I knew who it was. I considered not answering, but I realized it was a confrontation I had to face. This wasn't something I could delegate to a voicemail box. I opened the door. There they stood, my father, my mother, and Ethan, a trinity of desperation. They looked haggard, like soldiers who had just lost a decisive battle. Leo, my mother began, stepping forward as if to hug me. I didn't move, and she stopped, letting her hands fall awkwardly to her sides. We need to talk. I stepped back, leaving the door open. Come in. They filed into my minimalist living room, looking around as if they'd never seen it before. It was too small, too Spartan for their drama. They sat on my couch, a tight, uncomfortable unit. I remained standing, leaning against the doorframe. It was a conscious choice. This was my space. I would not be a guest in my own home. My father cleared his throat. He, the patriarch, had been demoted to the opening act. Leo, look. The other night, it was a misunderstanding. Things got out of hand. Ethan, hunched over, looking at the floor, mumbled, "Wasn't supposed to happen like that." Chloe didn't know. "We are so sorry for how it must have looked," my mother added, her voice dripping with the syrupy sincerity she reserved for major crises. "We were trying so hard to give your brother a little confidence." I listened. I didn't interrupt. I let them spin their web of excuses. Misunderstanding. Confidence. For the family. The words were meaningless, hollow shells. They were apologizing for being caught, not for the crime itself. When they finally ran out of steam, a tense silence filled the room. I let it hang there for a beat, then I spoke, my voice calm and even. "The voice of the surgeon. The blueprint," I said. "The design for the lake house." Ethan flinched. My father's jaw tightened. "You stole it, Ethan." I continued, my eyes locked on his. "And you," I said, turning to my father, "you co-signed the lie. You stood in front of a room full of people and celebrated him for it." "It was a gesture," my father snapped, his composure cracking. "A symbol. It was my work," I said, my voice cutting through his. "It was my gift, and you used it to erase me." My mother started to cry then, the quiet, manipulative tears of a professional victim. "Leo, please. Don't do this. We're family. Family forgives." And there it was. The final play. The guilt card. But it had lost its power over me. I looked at the three of them, at their desperate, self-serving faces, and I saw them for what they were. Not family, but a board of directors for a company I no longer wished to be a part of. Then my mother, through her tears, delivered the real reason for their visit. The real invoice. "Leo, honey," she sniffled, reaching out a hand toward me. "Since you're a partner now, or going to be, and since you and Chloe are colleagues, it's really a wonderful opportunity. You've always been so responsible. You could guide her, look out for her, and maybe you could introduce Ethan to some of your contacts, help him make some real connections." It would mean the world to your father. It would be so good for the family. I stared at her. I felt a laugh rising in my chest, a cold, humorless thing. It finally clicked into place. This entire visit, the apologies, the tears, it wasn't about mending a bridge. It was about building a new one, a bigger one, for them to cross over into my world. They didn't want their son back. They wanted a contact, a benefactor, a tool. They needed my success, the very success they had tried so hard to deny and belittle. A profound and chilling clarity washed over me. It was like standing on a cliff edge and seeing the entire landscape for the first time. The jagged rocks, the treacherous paths, the sheer drop. I had been navigating it blind for 35 years. Now my eyes were wide open. I pushed myself off the doorframe, walking past them into my small kitchen area. I opened the fridge and took out a bottle of water, the simple, mundane act feeling strangely significant. I was thirsty. I was dehydrated from years of pouring everything I had into them. "I need you to leave," I said, my back still to them. My voice was quiet, devoid of the anger they were expecting. It was the detached tone of a final decision. "Leo, don't be like this," my father started, his voice rising in frustration. "We came here to apologize." "No," I said, turning to face them. I twisted the cap off the water bottle. "You came here to pitch a new business proposal. You want access. You want my connections. You want me to underwrite Ethan's future, just like I've been underwriting yours." Ethan shot to his feet. "That's not fair. I've been working my ass off." "Working your ass off, spending my money," I retorted, my voice still level. Presented my designs. Living in a house of cards that I paid for. I took a long drink of water. The coolness was a shock to my system. "The answer is no," I said. "The meeting is over." I walked to the front door and opened it, holding it wide. The message was unmistakable. For a moment, they just stared at me, a mixture of shock and fury on their faces. They had come expecting a negotiation, a tearful reunion, a scene where they could manipulate me back into my designated role. They were not prepared for a dismissal. My father was the first to move. His face was purple with rage. He stalked past me without a word, his shoulders rigid. Ethan followed, refusing to meet my eyes, a flush of shame creeping up his neck. My mother was last. She paused at the doorway, her face crumpled in a mask of genuine-looking sorrow. "You're breaking my heart, Leo," she whispered. "No, Mom," I replied, my voice gentle for the first time but firm. "You're just realizing that it's not yours to break anymore." She flinched as if I'd slapped her. Then she turned and hurried after the other two. I closed the door behind them, the soft click of the latch sounding like a gavel falling on a final judgment. I didn't storm around the apartment. I didn't punch a wall. I didn't even finish the water. I walked calmly to my desk and sat down, my movements deliberate. I felt a strange sense of peace, the kind that comes after a violent storm has passed, leaving a clean, quiet stillness in its wake. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed in the dimming afternoon light. There was no anger fueling my fingers, no desire for revenge. There was only the cold, clear logic of the surgeon. The patient was terminal. The only course of action left was to cut the cord. I logged into my bank. I navigated to the recurring payment section. Vance and Son Construction Supply. I clicked on it. A small pop-up appeared. "Are you sure you want to cancel this scheduled payment?" I moved the cursor to the yes button. Click. Next, I opened a new email. The recipient was my lawyer. The subject line was simple, urgent. Vance and Son loan agreement. The body of the email was short and to the point. "David, please begin proceedings immediately to have my name removed as co-signer and guarantor on all business loans pertaining to Vance and Son Construction Supply. I am aware of the penalty clauses. I am prepared to absorb them. This is a full and final project cancellation. Regards, Leo Vance." I hit send. I closed the laptop. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel sad. I felt balanced. The books were finally balanced. The project was over. The investment had failed, and I had at long last written it off. The silence from their end lasted exactly 48 hours. It was the time it took for the reality of my actions to hit their bank account. When the expected transfer didn't arrive, the war began. It wasn't a direct assault. They were smarter than that. They knew they couldn't confront me head-on anymore. So they launched a guerrilla campaign, a war of whispers and innuendo fought on the battlefield of social media. The first shot was fired by my cousin Mark, a vague, sanctimonious post on his Facebook wall. It's sad when people get a little success and forget the ones who sacrifice to get them there. A tree can't grow without roots, no matter how tall it gets. A flurry of supportive comments followed from their side of the family. Then came a post from a family friend, a woman who used to babysit me. A picture of her own children with the caption, "So blessed to have kids who understand that family is everything." They'd never abandon their parents, no matter what. It was a masterclass in passive aggression. They were painting a narrative, piece by piece, for their audience of friends and distant relatives. The story was simple and powerful. Leo Vance, the cold, arrogant architect, had become rich and famous and had heartlessly abandoned the loving family who had given him everything. My silence was their proof. My refusal to engage was twisted into an admission of guilt. At first, it stung. The old wounds throbbed. A part of me wanted to scream, to post my own evidence, to fight fire with fire. But the surgeon in me knew better. You don't argue with a disease, you contain it. The campaign escalated. A week later, I received a calendar invite from my company's head of human resources. The subject, confidential discussion. My heart didn't sink. It hardened. They had brought the war to my doorstep. I knew what had happened. Someone, likely an anonymous account run by Ethan or one of his cronies, had packaged their lies and sent them to my employer. They were trying to poison the well, to make me a liability. They were trying to take away the one thing I had built for myself. I spent the evening before the meeting not in a panic, but in careful preparation. I didn't gather angry rebuttals. I gathered data. I printed out the bank statements showing years of transfers to Vance and Son. I printed the original loan agreement I had co-signed, highlighting my name and the astronomical sum. I printed a few of the more recent, desperate text messages from Ethan begging for a little float to cover payroll. I organized it all into a slim, professional portfolio. No emotion, just facts. The next day, I walked into the office of Maria Flores, our head of HR. With her was one of his senior partners, Mr. Sterling, a man whose quiet demeanor belied a razor-sharp mind. They both looked grim. "Leo, thanks for coming in," Maria began, gesturing to a chair. "We've received an anonymous email containing some troubling allegations regarding your character and your conduct outside of work." I nodded slowly. "I imagined you might have." Sterling leaned forward, his eyes fixed on me. "The email alleges a pattern of familial neglect and financial abandonment. It paints a picture of someone who is, and I quote, untrustworthy and morally bankrupt. In our line of business, Leo, reputation is paramount. We need to know what we're dealing with." I didn't speak. I simply reached into my briefcase, pulled out the slim portfolio, and slid it across the polished mahogany table. "That is the context," I said, my voice steady. "It is a private family matter that has unfortunately become public. Everything you need to understand the situation is in that folder." Sterling opened the portfolio. Maria leaned over his shoulder. I watched their faces as they read. I saw their eyebrows rise at the bank statements. I saw a flicker of disbelief as they scanned the loan agreement. I saw Sterling's mouth tighten into a thin line as he read Ethan's pleading texts. The silence in the room was thick. It took them about 5 minutes to go through everything. When Sterling finally closed the folder, he looked up at me. The grim expression was gone. In its place was something else. Respect. "My God, Leo," he said, his voice low. "You've been carrying this company on your back." "It's my family," I said simply. Or it was. Maria let out a long breath. "This email is a malicious, calculated attack. Leo, I'm so sorry you're going through this." Sterling pushed the portfolio back towards me. "We don't need this. We've seen enough. Your position here is secure. Your reputation is intact. The firm stands behind you 100%. This matter is closed." He stood up and extended his hand. "Now, let's get back to work. I want to see the final renderings for the Kestrel lobby." As I shook his hand, I felt a wave of validation so powerful it almost buckled my knees. It wasn't the hollow praise of my father or the tearful manipulations of my mother. It was real. It was earned. It was based on facts, not fiction. In their attempt to destroy my world, my family had only succeeded in showing my true value to the people who actually mattered. 6 months passed. 6 months of quiet, relentless work. 6 months of silence. The smear campaign had died down, whimpering into oblivion after their attack, and my workplace failed so spectacularly. I heard through the grapevine, from Uncle Ben, the only family member I still spoke to, that Vance and son was in dire straits. My father had been forced to sell off assets. Ethan was nowhere to be seen. I felt nothing. It was like reading a news story about a foreign country. In those 6 months, I was officially made a partner at Stanton & Moore. My name was added to the letterhead. My office was moved to the top floor, with a panoramic view of the Seattle skyline I was now actively shaping. The Kestrel Tower was nearing completion, a gleaming monument of glass and steel that pierced the clouds. One afternoon, I was walking through the bustling, open-plan workspace on the 34th floor, reviewing schematics with a junior designer, when I saw Chloe. We hadn't spoken about anything personal since the party. Our interactions were polite, professional, and to the point. She saw me and hesitated, then walked over, her expression serious. "Leo," she said, her voice low, "can I have a word?" We stepped into an empty conference room. The view of the sound was breathtaking. "I just wanted to say," she began, twisting a ring on her finger. "I'm sorry. For everything. I was naive. I had no idea." She took a breath. "I'm not with Ethan anymore. I broke up with him a few weeks after the party. He told me that the reason you two had a falling out was because you were jealous of him taking over the family business." I looked at her, and for the first time, I felt a flicker of pity for this woman who had been unwittingly cast in our family's sick drama. "Thank you for telling me, Chloe," I said, "but it's not your burden to carry. It was never about you." "I know, but still, I'm sorry. I appreciate that," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "You're a talented analyst, Chloe. You have a bright future here." It was both a compliment and a clear signal. This was our relationship now, colleagues. Nothing more. She understood. She nodded, a sad smile touching her lips. "Thank you, Leo, for everything." She left, and I stood there for a moment, looking out at the water. The final loose end had been tied up. Later that week, I was standing on the rooftop of the Kestrel Tower. The city spread out beneath me, a glittering tapestry of light and life. The wind was sharp and clean. It felt like the top of the world. It was a place I had built. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out. The screen displayed a name I hadn't seen in half a year. Arthur Vance. I stared at the name. I imagined him on the other end, his pride finally shattered, his kingdom crumbling. Maybe he was calling to scream. Maybe to beg. Maybe to finally, genuinely apologize. It didn't matter. His reasons were no longer a part of my design. With a steady thumb, I pressed on his name, navigated to the options menu, and selected block this caller. A confirmation popped up. I pressed block. Click. I then went to my mother's contact. Block. Click. Then Ethan. Block. Click. A surgeon, excising the last remnants of the disease. I put the phone back in my pocket and leaned against the parapet, a deep sense of peace settling over me. It wasn't the fiery thrill of victory or the bitter satisfaction of revenge. It was something quieter, deeper. It was the feeling of a perfectly balanced structure. I thought about my father's failed dream of being an architect and my own success. I realized the greatest gift a designer can have isn't an unlimited budget or a perfect site. It's a blank page. The freedom to create something new, something strong and true from the ground up. They'd spent my whole life trying to write my story for me, trying to fit me into their flawed, crumbling blueprint. But they were gone now. The page was empty, and I, Leo Vance, the surgeon, the architect, the partner, was finally free to design my own.